Why did you exchange me with iPhone 16 Pro Max?
Adara stared at her phone screen, her fingers tapping impatiently as the seconds ticked by. Her TikTok feed was flooded with shiny new gadgets, glamorous outfits, and influencers living lives that seemed straight out of a dream. The envy rose within her like a tidal wave. She scrolled mindlessly, her heart sinking with every post that showed someone, anyone, living the life she desperately wanted. It wasn't just the pretty faces or the flashy clothes. It was the status, the validation, the ones with the most likes, the most followers, the perfect phones, and the luxury cars. They were seen. They were important. And right now, Adara felt invisible. She glanced around her cramped dorm room, the walls lined with textbooks and empty coffee cups, the reality of her student life sinking in. No designer handbags, no brand new phones, no Instagram-worthy moments. Just her, trying to make ends meet with her small stipend from her parents and the occasional freelance work she could scrape up.
Why can't I have what they have?
She muttered to herself, her voice barely above a whisper. She wanted the iPhone 16 Pro Max, the one she'd seen everywhere. The phone that screamed wealth, success, and power. Her friends had the latest models, but they didn't have the 16 Pro Max. The phone was a whole new level, the ultimate symbol of prestige. She could feel the desire building inside her, a need so strong it felt almost like a hunger she couldn't ignore. But it wasn't just the phone that gnawed at her. It was the people behind those phones. The influencers, the famous TikTokers who had millions of followers, the ones whose lives were carefully curated, every moment a perfect snapshot of happiness and luxury. They were living in a world Adara felt she could never reach, but she wanted to so badly. She watched one TikTok video of a girl flaunting her new iPhone 16 Pro Max, her smile wide and her laughter carefree. It was too much. Adara threw her phone down onto the bed, her chest tight with frustration.
I deserve that. I deserve to be seen like that. Why shouldn't I have it?
Her phone buzzed with a new notification, a message from her friend Amara.
Adora, did you see Toby's new post? Another new car? I swear he's living the dream.
Adora's heart skipped. Toby. The name was like a magnet to her, pulling her attention immediately. He wasn't just any rich kid. He was a local Yahoo boy, a notorious hustler who could get anything. Phones, gadgets, money, status. Whatever he wanted, he could make happen. People said he could even get his hands on the latest iPhone the moment it dropped, before anyone else. Adara bit her lip. Her mind began to race. What if Toby could get her that iPhone 16 Pro Max? What if she didn't have to wait months to scrape together enough money for it? What if she could get it faster through some other means? She had seen the way he operated, always with a smooth, confident smile, a look that made you feel like you were part of something exclusive. His world was one of power, influence, and flashy success. People worshipped him. Maybe it was time she reached out. She grabbed her phone, her fingers trembling slightly. She typed out the message, her mind already calculating the cost, the price she'd pay for a taste of that life. Adara.
Hey, Toby, I've been thinking, I really need something big to show the world I've arrived. I want the iPhone 16 Pro Max, and I heard you can get your hands on anything. How can I make it happen?
Adara hit send before she could second-guess herself. As soon as the message was sent, her heart pounded in her chest. What am I doing? But she knew she couldn't stop now. The desire had taken hold of her, and she couldn't let it go. Adara couldn't sleep that night. Her mind raced, tangled in thoughts of what had just happened. She kept replaying her message to Toby in her head, each time with a deeper sense of both excitement and dread. The phone buzzed on her nightstand, pulling her from her restless thoughts. She jumped, her heart skipping a beat. It was a reply from Toby. Toby.
I see you've got taste, Adora. but nothing comes easy. If you want that phone, you have to prove you're serious. I don't work for free and I don't do favors for just anyone."
Adora's hands shook as she read his words. There was something in his message that made her feel both terrified and exhilarated. She had heard the rumors about him, how he worked with dangerous people, how he could make anything happen if you were willing to pay the price. But now that she was this close to getting what she wanted, a rush of power surged through her veins. She didn't care about the rumors. All that mattered was the iPhone 16 Pro Max. She could already picture herself holding it, taking selfies, posting on social media, getting the likes and the attention. It would be her ticket to a new life, one where she was no longer the invisible girl in the corner. Adora bit her lip as she typed back, her fingers almost moving on their own. Adora.
I'm serious. What's the price? Tell me what I need to do.
Seconds later, his reply came through. Toby.
"You want that phone? You'll need to give me something of equal value. Your sister Chinonso."
Adora stared at the message. Her mind couldn't process it at first. Her sister, the quiet one, the one who was always in the background, never asking for attention, the one who had never wanted the spotlight, the one who never demanded more than the bare minimum. Adora's heart hammered in her chest. What does he mean, Adora?
What do you mean by give?
Toby's reply was chilling in its simplicity. Toby,
"I'll take her. You'll never miss her. She's just in your shadow anyway. You give her to me and I'll get you the iPhone 16 Pro Max. No questions asked."
Adora stared at the screen, a wave of nausea rising in her chest. She couldn't believe what she was reading. Her sister. But then the image of the phone flickered in her mind again. The sleek, shiny device, the envy of everyone. She could already imagine herself holding it, showing it off, finally becoming the center of attention. Chinonso, quiet and withdrawn, would never miss it. No one would. Adora was sure of it. After all, Chinonso wasn't like her. Chinonso didn't crave the spotlight, didn't want the attention. It was just a phone, just a way to elevate herself. The thought of her sister being out of the picture, quiet and unnoticed as she always was, didn't seem so bad now. Adora's fingers hovered over the keyboard. The decision was on her. She could accept Toby's deal and finally get everything she ever wanted. She could end the struggle and step into the world of those who didn't have to worry about what they didn't have. She pressed send. Adora.
Okay, deal.
The next few days passed in a blur. Adora was caught in a whirlwind of excitement and guilt, but the excitement kept pushing the guilt down into the pit of her stomach. She knew what she was doing was wrong, but she couldn't stop herself. The phone arrived exactly as promised. She received the notification just as she was about to head to class. Her heart raced. She opened the box, her hands trembling as she pulled out the sleek device. It was even more beautiful than she'd imagined. The bright screen glowed under the light, and the sound of the notifications felt like music to her ears. This was it. This was everything she had ever wanted. She couldn't stop smiling as she turned it over in her hands. But a cold shiver ran down her spine as she remembered the cost. Her sister. Chinonso was still missing. But Adora had pushed the thought away, telling herself that it didn't matter. After all, this phone was worth it, right? She slipped the phone into her bag and headed to class, her heart pounding in anticipation. The moment she walked into the lecture hall, her classmates' eyes immediately went to the phone in her hand. The whispers started almost instantly.
Is that the iPhone 16 Pro Max? Wow, Adora, where did you get that?
For the first time in what felt like forever, Adora felt seen. She felt powerful. She was no longer the quiet girl in the corner. She was the girl with the phone that everyone wanted. But beneath the surface, something dark was starting to stir. A part of her, a tiny voice she couldn't ignore, was screaming that something was wrong, that her actions were irreversible. Still, she pushed it aside. Tonight, she would post a picture with the phone and everyone would see. She would be the envy of everyone on campus. Adara couldn't remember the last time she had felt this high. The phone sat on her desk, its screen glowing softly in the dim light of her room. She couldn't wait to show it off. This was more than just a device. It was her ticket to the life she had always wanted. Tonight she would post a picture, showing everyone just how far she'd come. The university, the people she had always envied, they would all see her now. As she snapped a picture of the phone in her hand, the sleekness of it almost glowing in the soft light, Adara felt her pulse quicken. The camera lens caught every angle perfectly, just as she had imagined. She quickly added filters, adjusted the brightness, and added the perfect caption. New beginnings, new goals. Blessed iPhone 16 Pro Max, living my best life. She hesitated for just a second before hitting post. The rush of excitement overtook her, and she pressed the button. This is it. This is the moment. The likes started flooding in almost immediately. Her notifications buzzed non-stop. Friends, acquaintances, even strangers commenting, liking, and sharing. She smiled to herself, the validation feeling sweeter with each passing second. It was like a drug, and she couldn't get enough.
Look at you, Adara,
one of her friends commented.
Queen status.
Another comment followed.
You're literally goals. That phone is everything.
She felt powerful, unstoppable. For the first time, she was on top of the world. Her classmates who had once ignored her now greeted her with admiration. The ones who had always had the latest gadgets now seemed small in comparison. She had the iPhone 16 Pro Max. She had the status. She had everything she'd ever dreamed of. But as the night wore on, that small nagging voice in her head returned. She pushed it down, burying it beneath the flood of compliments and likes. Chinyonzo, her sister, the one who had been taken in exchange for the phone. Adara tried to shake off the thought, but it clung to her like a shadow. She hadn't seen or heard from Chinyonzo since the day she'd made the deal with Toby. It was almost like she'd disappeared, like nothing had changed. But she knew deep down that something was terribly wrong. The deal had been sealed. The cost was her sister. The weight of it threatened to crush her, but she couldn't afford to dwell on it now, not when she was finally living the life she had always wanted. But as Adaora fell asleep that night, her phone next to her, the smile she had worn all day slowly faded as the darkness crept in. She dreamt of Chinyonzo, of her quiet face, the one that never demanded anything from anyone. She saw her sister's eyes, wide and filled with fear, and she woke up gasping, her body covered in cold sweat. The next morning, Adara rushed through her classes, unable to shake the feeling that something wasn't right. But her phone's constant buzz kept her distracted. Another comment, another notification. Every beep was a reminder of how much she was being watched, how much she had achieved. That afternoon, Adara met up with some friends at the cafeteria. They crowded around her, eager to catch a glimpse of her new phone.
You really did it, Adara.
One of them, Chiamaka, said with a grin.
This is huge. You're finally one of us now.
Adara smiled, the familiar sense of validation filling her chest.
It feels great,
she said, trying to ignore the uneasy knot forming in her stomach. But just as they were about to sit down, Adaora's phone buzzed again. It was a message from Toby. Toby.
You think it's over, don't you? You've got your phone, but the deal isn't complete.
Her heart skipped a beat. What did he mean? What else could there possibly be? Adaora.
What do you mean? I did what you asked. I got you Chinonso.
Toby.
That's just the beginning. You can't have everything you want, Adaora. You've made your choice. Now face the consequences.
Adaora felt her blood run cold. Her fingers hovered over the screen, her mind racing. What was he saying? What consequences? But before she could respond, a second message came through. This one from an unknown number. Unknown.
You won't get away with this, Adaora. The price you've paid isn't over yet. The curse is already on you.
She froze, the words hanging in the air like a dark cloud. A curse? Adara felt the world around her close in. The compliments, the likes, the newfound attention. They suddenly felt hollow, tainted by the fear creeping into her mind. Something was wrong. It wasn't just the guilt. It was the feeling that she was being watched, that something was waiting for her. That night, as Adara sat alone in her room, staring at the phone that had cost her so much, she couldn't shake the unease that had settled deep inside her. She felt like a prisoner to the device. Every time it buzzed, her heart skipped a beat. What was happening to her? Then she heard a knock on the door.
Who's there?
Adara called out, standing up. But when she opened the door, no one was there. The hallway was empty. Her phone buzzed again. A message from Toby. Toby.
The price you paid can never be undone. You wanted fame, you wanted the phone, you wanted the life, now you have it. But it comes with a price, Adara, a price you can never escape.
Adara stared at the screen, her breath coming in shallow gasps. She stumbled back into her room, locking the door behind her. Her phone, her precious phone, felt like a weight in her hand, its glow now more sinister than comforting. The nightmares, the messages, the whispers, they were just the beginning. The days following Toby's message felt like they bled into one another, a hazy blur of likes, comments, and unease. Adara could no longer escape the feeling that something was terribly wrong. She kept the phone close, almost as if it were a lifeline, but every buzz, every notification seemed to deepen the sense of dread that was growing inside her. That night, after hours of scrolling through her social media, Adara finally decided to get some sleep. She turned off the lights, but the silence in her room felt suffocating. She lay still, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling, her mind refusing to quiet. It was then that she heard it. A soft whisper, almost like a breath, came from the corner of her room. Adara froze, her heart pounding in her chest. She turned her head, but the darkness was thick and unyielding. No one was there. Her breath came faster as she sat up, her eyes scanning the room, searching for something, anything. But it was too late. Her phone buzzed again, the familiar vibration making her jump. Message from unknown. I'm still here, Adara. You can't hide from me. Her hands shook as she read the message. It was from that same unknown number. Her chest tightened. The room felt colder now, the air thick with something she couldn't quite place. It's just my imagination, she told herself, just a trick of the mind. But then she heard the whisper again, louder this time. Adara? The sound was coming from the corner near her closet. She stood up slowly, every step heavy as though something was pulling her toward it. Her breath caught in her throat as she reached for the door handle, her hand trembling. The closet door creaked open, revealing nothing but shadows. But as she turned back, she saw it, there, on the floor in front of her bed, a small, tattered doll. Chinyonso's doll, the one she had left behind when she was younger. Adara's heart stopped.
No.
The doll's eyes seemed to glisten in the moonlight, like they were watching her. The weight of it hit her like a ton of bricks. It's her. It's Chinyonso. Her phone buzzed again, but this time Adara couldn't bring herself to look. She stood frozen, her mind spiraling. A chill ran down her spine, and she felt the air grow heavy. Something was inside the room with her, something that was not just in her head. The next morning, Adara couldn't shake the terror that clung to her. She barely managed to drag herself out of bed, her mind clouded with the image of the doll and the whispering voice. What was happening? She checked her phone but quickly put it down. There were too many messages now, and she couldn't face them. Not yet. Her parents had been calling her all morning, but she had ignored their calls. They had been asking about Chinyonso, asking if she knew where her sister was. Adara had told them that Chinyonso was fine, that she was probably off at a friend's house or spending time away from school. She didn't want to tell them the truth. The guilt, the fear of what she had done, made it impossible to speak the words. After all, how could she explain to her parents that she had traded her sister for a phone, for status? Adara's phone rang again. It was her mother. She hesitated, then answered.
Hey, Mom.
Her mother's voice was filled with concern.
Adara, have you heard from Chinyonso? We've been trying to reach her all week. We're getting worried. She hasn't answered her phone. You know how she is, but it's not like her to disappear like this.
Adara's stomach turned. She glanced at the phone, the iPhone 16 Pro Max, lying innocently on the bed beside her. It had become a symbol of everything she had wanted, but now it felt like a curse. Her sister's absence, the doll, the whispering, it was all tied to it. She's fine, Mom, Adara said, her voice sounding strangely hollow to her own ears. She's probably just with some friends. You know her, always quiet, always keeping to herself. Don't worry about her. Her mother didn't sound convinced.
Adara, we haven't heard from her in days. We even tried to call her friends, but no one's seen her. Are you sure she's okay?
Adara swallowed hard, the words tasting bitter.
I'm sure, Mom. She's just taking some time for herself. You know how she gets. Don't worry.
Her mother paused, and for a moment, Adara thought she could hear her mother's breath, shaky and uncertain on the other end.
I hope you're right. Please tell her to call us, okay?
I will, Mom.
Adara whispered before quickly hanging up. She felt the weight of the lie press down on her chest, but the phone in her hand seemed to pull her attention away. Another message from Toby. Toby.
You think you can run from the price, Adara? You can't. She's already here. You'll never be free. You can have the fame, you can have the phone, but there's always a price.
Adara's hand trembled as she read the message. It was then that she heard the faint sound of something scraping against the window. She rushed to the window, her heart racing. There, in the reflection of the glass, she saw her sister's face, pale and distorted, pressing against the other side of the window, her eyes wide with fear. The image flickered and disappeared almost immediately. Adara screamed, stumbling backward, her hands clutching the phone for support. That night, as she lay in bed, she could hear the whispers again. This time, they were clearer. Why, Adara? Chinonso's voice echoed softly in the room, but there was no one there. Why did you do this to me? Adara's heart hammered in her chest. She clutched her phone, her mind spinning in a vortex of guilt and fear. The walls of her room seemed to close in on her, and the feeling that something was watching her became unbearable. She knew it wasn't just in her head. The phone buzzed again. Toby.
You're losing control, Adara. You can't escape this. She's here now, and she won't let you forget. The price has been paid, and you're the one who has to live with it.
Adara's vision blurred as she clutched the phone tightly in her hands. She could feel it now, the curse, the consequences of her actions. Chinonso's ghost was here, and there was no escape. Adara couldn't sleep. The house was quiet, but the whispers refused to stop. Each night they grew louder, more insistent, like a chorus of voices that only she could hear. She'd tried everything, keeping her lights on, listening to music to drown out the sounds, even talking to herself in an attempt to convince her mind that it was just stress. But none of it worked. The whispers were real, and they were getting closer. And then there was the feeling, the sensation of being watched, the sense that something or someone was always in the corner of her room, in the shadow of her thoughts. Each time she glanced around, she swore she could see her sister's reflection in the glass, her eyes wide, pleading, accusing.
Chinonso,
Adara whispered softly into the stillness of the room.
please, leave me alone. I did it for us. I did it for me, for you.
But the silence that followed was thick, suffocating. Adara squeezed her eyes shut, but she couldn't escape the truth. This was her fault. The phone buzzed again. She almost didn't want to check, but something inside her urged her to. Maybe it was Toby. Maybe it was the last part of the deal. She reached for the phone, but when she unlocked it, there was no message. Just a single image. A picture of Chinyonso staring back at her with those wide, haunting eyes. The same face she'd seen in the reflection. Adaura's blood ran cold. It wasn't just her mind playing tricks anymore. Her sister's presence, her ghost, was now as real as the phone in her hand. The next day, Adaura couldn't shake the sense of doom that hung over her. Every step she took, every smile she forced, felt wrong. The world around her seemed darker, more oppressive. Her classmates, once admiring her for the iPhone and the status it brought, now seemed to view her with an odd sense of distance. There were no compliments, no more admiration, just silence, as if they could sense that something had changed. At lunch, her phone rang. It was her mother again.
Adaura, where are you? We've been to the police. They can't find Chinonso. They say no one has seen her since last week. Please tell me you've heard something, anything.
The words hit Adaura like a wave crashing over her. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. What could she say? How could she explain that her sister, her twin, was gone because of her own selfish desires?
I haven't heard from her, Mum. I'm sure she'll be fine,
Adaura said, her voice trembling with the lie.
She probably just needs space. You know how she is.
But her mother's voice cracked on the other end.
Adaura, we've called everyone. No one has seen her. Please, if you know anything, just tell us.
Adaura's hand shook as she held the phone to her ear, her stomach turning. She couldn't keep lying to her mother. But how could she face her knowing the truth? How could she tell her that she had sold her sister's freedom for something so shallow, so meaningless?
I'll find her, Mum. I promise,
she said, the words hollow. That night, as Adaura sat alone in her room, the whispers came again, but they weren't whispers anymore. They were voices, loud, frantic, desperate. Adaura, why did you do this? Why did you trade me for a phone, for status, for a life that isn't even real? Chinonso's voice echoed through her mind, a broken melody. Adaura squeezed her eyes shut, clutching the phone to her chest, but the whispers wouldn't stop. They grew louder, more urgent, until Adaura felt like her head was going to explode.
Chinonso,
she screamed.
Please stop. I'm sorry, I didn't know.
But there was no answer, no comforting silence, only the deafening roar of her own guilt. The phone buzzed again. Adaura picked it up, her hands shaking. She opened the message, but it wasn't from Toby. It wasn't even from her mother. It was from an unknown number. The message simply read, "She's waiting. She wants to be found. You can't hide from the truth forever." Adaura stared at the screen, her breath catching in her throat. She couldn't take it anymore. The guilt, the fear, the haunting presence of her sister's ghost. It was too much. The weight of her actions pressed down on her chest until she couldn't breathe. She had traded her sister for a phone, for a life she thought she wanted, but now realized was hollow, empty. Nothing could fill the void her greed had created. Adaura collapsed onto the floor, clutching the phone as if it were the only thing keeping her tethered to reality. Her room was dark, silent except for the whispers that filled her mind. She heard Chinonso's voice again, clearer now, as if her sister was standing right behind her. "You took everything from me, Adaura." A shiver ran down Adaura's spine. She couldn't escape it anymore. There was no running from the consequences of what she had done. Adaura looked at the phone one last time, its sleek screen glowing softly in the darkness. She could still hear Chinonso's voice growing louder and louder until it was deafening. The phone, once a symbol of everything she had wanted, now felt like a curse that would haunt her forever. And then, with a final desperate scream, Adaura dropped the phone onto the floor. The screen cracked with a sickening sound, the glass shattering into a million tiny pieces. The room fell into silence. But it was too late. Adara could still hear Chinonso's voice in her mind, still see her sister's haunting eyes. There was no escaping it now. The price had been paid, and Adara was the one who had to live with it. Days turned into weeks, and Adara's life slowly crumbled. The guilt never left her, and the whispers in her mind grew louder, more incessant, until she could barely tell where the real world ended and the haunting began. She never saw Chinonso again, but she heard her everywhere. The phone, broken and useless, sat in a corner of her room, a silent reminder of the price she had paid. Adara's once popular TikTok account, the one she had hoped would elevate her, was abandoned, the likes and comments fading away as her followers drifted. Her family, searching for her twin sister, never found her. But Adaora knew. She could never escape the truth, and in the end, it was her own soul that was lost. The days blurred together, each one a mirror image of the last. Adaora's life, once full of the bright promises of fame and social media validation, had become a dark, suffocating pit. She couldn't escape the thoughts of Chinonso, her sister's face constantly haunting her. Her eyes, wide with pain and fear, were etched into Adaora's mind. The whispers didn't stop. They followed her everywhere, growing louder and more urgent, until she could no longer distinguish them from her own thoughts. Her classmates noticed the change, but no one dared approach her. She had become a shadow of the girl she once was. Her once pristine appearance was now disheveled, her eyes wide with panic, hair unkempt. The iPhone 16 Pro Max, which had once brought her so much attention, now sat discarded on her desk, its shattered screen reflecting a fractured version of Adaora's broken soul. The whispers grew into a constant barrage of voices, each one echoing in her ears, never allowing her a moment of peace. They were no longer just Chinonso's voice. It was the voice of her guilt, of the choices she had made. "You took everything from me," they whispered again and again. "You will never escape it," they taunted, mocking her every step. Adaora couldn't remember the last time she had eaten or slept. The constant barrage of whispers and the image of Chinonso's face in every reflection had broken her. She would stare at herself in the mirror and see only her sister's ghost staring back at her, accusing her, haunting her. At night, the room grew colder, the air thicker. It felt like the walls were closing in on her, and the whispers turned into screams. Adora would wake in the dead of night, gasping for breath, her hands trembling as she reached out, desperate for something, anything, to anchor her. But there was nothing. Only the emptiness of her actions, only the torment of her decision. It was early one morning when Adara found herself standing at the edge of the university campus, staring at the bustling crowd of students going about their day. She should have been one of them, alive, thriving, with a bright future ahead. But instead, she stood there, numb. The whispers had reached a crescendo, becoming unbearable. She couldn't take it anymore. In the distance, she thought she saw Chinonso, her sister's face, pale and lifeless, watching her from across the street. The world blurred around her as she stumbled forward, her eyes wide, frantic, calling out her sister's name. "Chinonso, please, I'm sorry, come back," she screamed, her voice breaking. But no one was there. The people around her looked at her like she was mad. Some whispered to each other, others avoided her gaze, but no one stopped to help. No one even noticed the deep cracks in her mind, the abyss she was falling into. Adora's hands shook as she turned back, her heart pounding. She could feel her sister everywhere, the weight of her absence suffocating her. "You can't run from this," the voices said. She fell to her knees in the middle of the busy campus, her body shaking violently as the reality of her actions fully consumed her. The guilt, the madness, it had all built to this moment. Her mind, her soul, shattered beyond repair. The final moment. The campus around her grew quieter, the sounds of footsteps and chatter fading into nothingness as she felt the ground beneath her feet shift. She wasn't sure where she was anymore. The buildings, the people, everything seemed far away, as though they existed in another world. "You will never escape it," the voices screamed. Adara pressed her hands to her ears, trying to block it out, but it only grew louder. She could hear her sister's voice, clearer now than ever before, and she couldn't shut it out. "You took my life, Adaora. You traded me for a phone, for a dream, for a lie, and now I will never leave you." Adaora's vision blurred, and in that moment, she couldn't distinguish the world around her from her mind's torment. She stumbled toward the edge of the campus, her heart racing, desperate for silence, for peace, for anything to stop the pain. And then she stopped. She looked down at the street, the cars passing by, oblivious to her. The world felt unreal, like she was caught between two dimensions. The real world and the suffocating void she had created for herself. With trembling hands, she reached into her pocket, pulling out the broken iPhone. She held it in front of her like a shield, staring at the cracked screen. This is it. This is the end. And without another thought, Adara stepped forward into the street. The world around her became a blur, the voices fading as she closed her eyes. The car that struck her was nothing more than a shadow in the corner of her mind. In the days that followed, news of Adara's tragic death spread quickly through the campus. Her friends, her classmates, and her family were left to mourn the young girl who had once been full of promise, full of dreams, but whose desperation for status and fleeting fame had led her down a path from which there was no return. Her phone, still shattered and discarded, was found at the scene, its screen cracked beyond recognition. But it wasn't just the phone that was broken, it was Adaora's soul, shattered by the choices she had made, by the price she had paid. Chinonso was never found. And as for Adaora, she was lost to the darkness, a victim of her own envy, her own greed. Her name would forever be whispered in the halls of the university, a cautionary tale for those who sought to trade their morals for a life that was never truly theirs. And as the days passed, those who remembered her would feel the weight of her story, a story of how desire, unchecked and unrelenting, can destroy everything in its path.